in Deuteronomy 6:6 through 8, the Shema. Keep these words that I'm commanding you today in your heart. Recite them to your children and talk about them when you are at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand and fix them as an emblem on your forehead. And part of the reason why we build storytelling into the community um, is for all the things that we've already named, for connection, for community building, for empathy. But one other thing that we do as faith leaders on why we tell these stories is so they know the history. They know the lineage that they come from all the great mothers and fathers and leaders and siblings of the great cloud of witnesses that have gone before them and those who are in their midst today. And so one of the things I want to share with you is this little story. This is me with no makeup. I was running to the store to get my face wash, and a person next to me said she was just standing in front of the counter looking very confused as I grabbed, asked, excuse me, can I get to my stuff? And so she started asking me, well, what are you using? And, I like your skin. And so I started to tell her about this brand that I'm using that I really like. And do you know, she walked away with all of the entire line of products. And I wish I would have gotten her name and number so we can keep in touch so I can see how it was. But I asked if I could take her picture. And so it just was about 2 minutes that I spent with her just sharing my story about how good this products work for me. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if we did this when we're out talking about the communities of faith and love that we belong to, and talking about the relationship that we have to our creator God and the things that God has done for us. I mean, some of us may be doing that, but I wonder how many. And so one of the things that I found through my research was that when you look at brands and all of these things that we see across TikTok and social media, they're now doing storytelling through their branding. And what they've recognized is 55% of consumers are more likely to remember a story than a list of facts. So it helps you to connect more. 68% of consumers say that brand stories influence their purchasing decisions. Huge, which is what we see in this picture here. She went and bought everything. And companies with compelling brand stories have a 20% increase in customer loyalty. 64% of consumers make a purchase after watching a branded social media video. I'm one of those. And look at reviews all the time to purchase things. And so I wonder if, we can think about these types of this information to help us as faith leaders. Um, why does story matter? Stories matter because it is the most powerful tool. And this is what the brand marketing has said. Storytelling is a powerful tool in marketing that can help brands create deeper connections with their audience. Jennifer talked about connections. It can increase the perceived value of their products or services and outperform their competitors as consumers continue to demand more authentic, emotionally resonant content from brands. That's the empathy I think Megan was talking about. Storytelling will likely become even more important in the years to come. And so let's remember these things as we have come out of COVID and we have so much isolation, but stories connect us to one another. And y'all, we have the greatest storyteller on the earth as our guide for how to do this. And so we know as faith leaders, it is important to share um, Jesus's story with others. And so we do. So our tagline for Around the Table is sharing our stories because we understand that it is important to curate an intentional space where we can practice the sharing of our personal story, God's story with children and youth in households and faith communities using Sabbath practices. I recently made my dad cry, who is a Presbyterian pastor of, gosh, how old am I? 50 years. And, I was introducing him to preach at a congregation recently. And, I just shared from my heart to say, my dad really made a believer out of me because I listened to the stories that he would tell of his life while he was preaching as a kid. And And I believed my dad because I watched him live. And so when we have people like that in our lives who we see as young people living their faith, who are also telling these stories that we can match up with truth and understanding with who they are, it helps to build us as people of faith. And so that's why we have the Around the Table initiative. Lily, who is funding our project, um, has a lot of research that shows how important storytelling is, to especially storytelling in the home as it relates to communicating God's story. And so we are doing this great work through that process as well. And so we have put together a plan for how we um, want to share with faith leaders who are caring for youth and young adults, children and youth in their congregations. And so we created the Around the Table initiative that initially started last year with test cohorts. There were 12, started in October of 2024. We have one or two more that are finishing up this month. And we have our wave one cohort starting this fall, and which is why you're here. And next year we'll start another wave in 2026. And so the goals for the cohorts really are to explore and discuss how faith communities can practice these household and these Sabbath practices that we find are key to helping shape a young person's faith and help them to have rhythms within their lives that help to bring these stories out. And so there are many Sabbath practices, they're also called spiritual practices, that are around, but we identified six that we have found helpful as Christian educators and Christian formation leaders. The first is Sabbath. And Sabbath really is this descriptor for the rest of the five. Sabbath is time that we intentionally take to make time for God and to make time to build our relationship with God. And we do that through prayer, through storytelling, through hospitality, through service, and through retreat. And so we use these five, what we call Sabbath practices, throughout our cohort process as a foundation for how stories are shared and told through these lenses, where we use prayer and storytelling, hospitality, acts of hospitality and service, and ways of taking ourselves on retreat so that we can practice being disciples of Jesus Christ. Um, so our cohorts are grouped into all of these that you see here. We have general church cohorts, we have Korean and Asian American cohorts, Spanish speaking cohorts, immigrant focused cohorts, Black church cohorts, people of color cohorts, neurodiverse and differing ability, those who are serving youth with those needs. Cohorts to identify those needs, and LGBTQIA plus 2S folks, or ways that we can support them in ministry. And we also have dedicated some coaches for smaller membership churches. Those are churches where you see there are 0 youth in programming, or 0 to 9 youth in children and youth ministry programming. And the reason why we say 0 here is to identify that there are congregations who do not have youth and children in their ministry, but they are connected to children and youth by virtue of relationship, proximity. It might be in their community, or their congregation might be housing a church, a school within it. And so they are looking to expand and to reach out to the young people around them. So we identified that need as well. And so when you apply for being a cohort, you can choose any of these distinctions. We call these affinity groups. And, many just join general. So you don't have to choose any of the others that go underneath, follow the general church cohorts. But there are particular needs that come from all of these groupings that we found through our test cohorts. So we want to keep those for our wave 1 and wave 2 cohorts. And I'm going to pause here. I've been talking a while. Are there any questions so far from what you heard? Okay. All right, let's continue moving on. So our initiative cohort design, we have 2 designs. Let me explain the first, and then I'll show you a graphic that connects. So in the fall, we have two types of cohorts. We have some that are designed more for larger membership congregations who have multiple people on staff, or more people are available to volunteer. And so we will have a cohort with 2 to 3 churches or faith communities with 2 to 3 leaders per church. So, um, and let me just finish this and I'll show you the graphic. And then we also have cohorts that are going to be individuals from different churches grouped together. And those are usually our smaller membership churches who are not able to get 2 to 3 people per church for all of these sessions. As you see, every cohort will do 9 online sessions, meeting over 9 to 18 months. And you decide that length of time with your coach. Once you get assigned a coach, you all decide if you're going to do the 9 month, 12 month, or 18 month track. And then as you are going through these online sessions, we have prepared some topical webinars for you all to view together as a cohort. And they deal with different, what we call hot topics in children's and youth ministry right now, with some practical ways of practicing it or doing these things in your church or in your household. So this is what the cluster A looks like, where you have a pastoral leader, a parent, caregiver, or grandparent, and a children or youth leader from one church coming to the cohort. And so I hope this graphic shows you what that looks like. So we potentially have 9 people per cohort. And that's not going to be the case for every cohort, because there are some congregations that can only send a pastoral leader and a children's leader. And I will use Megan and Laura here as an example, just to show that could be a grouping. We could have a parent and a youth leader, or a parent and a children's youth volunteer that make up a group. So we're trying to get at least 2 to 3 people per church for this cluster group in wave 1 for this style of cohort, for the A cohort group. And then the second one, what we're calling our cohort cluster B, will be 5 to 9 individuals who are either a children and youth leader, pastoral leader, parent, caregiver, and/or grandparent from a faith community, who is looking to take the information that they gather through these cohort sessions and coached cohort sessions back to their church to share it with the families and households within their care. Any questions so far? Does that hopefully... Yes, I was hoping this would be clear. Yes, Megan.
You raised us as an example, but in our situation, we also have a youth leader that I would want to be involved. But both the youth leader and Laura, our children's ministry director, are also parents
Perfect.
of children in the church. So I'm assuming that would be okay.
Absolutely. And you raise a great point that there will be a lot of overlap here. And that's okay. And I think if we can get if we can get 3 leaders from each church, you have a greater possibility of I don't want to use the word success, but being able to incorporate all of these things in each of the ministries represented. Particularly, we know that things tend to happen when our pastoral leaders are supportive of these ministries and understand what's happening. And so let me speak to that as well. So we recognize that while smaller membership congregations might not be able to bring their pastoral leader along, or if the pastoral leader is the only one who can come along, we recognize that too. And we would just ask that pastoral leader to be present for the first and the last sessions of the coached cohort, so that they can hear what the person in their church will be doing, and the people they'll be with on this cohort. And then at the end, when they're wrapping up, to hear what all they've covered and gone through together. And so again, we're hoping that these ministry teams would come aboard to really speak to what issues they have currently happening in their ministries, the challenges that they're facing, so that the coaches who are faith leaders themselves can help to navigate through these waters that we're in post-pandemic. And so we're actually taking a coaching model instead of the consultant model, which the PCUSA had been in for so long. And so the approach is a little bit different, and I'll explain through these examples here on the screen. We have the consultant versus the coach. And so the approach is that the consultants are more structure and data driven while they look at the statistics and demographics of your area and bring that in to try to get you to reach out to those people. While our coaches are more personal and they assist you with your particular one-to-one needs in your faith community. And so the focus then, where the consultant might focus on the business that is associated with your church or the programming, the coach focuses on your identified needs. And so we're hoping that you all will identify some needs that you have in particular for your youth ministry. And as it relates to our theme of sharing our stories, why might it be difficult? Or what challenges might you see in your congregations for storytelling? Is there space to share your stories? Is there not space? And how can we open that up so that it can be a part of the ministry and the life of your children and youth ministry, and also your worship, where children and youth hopefully are involved so that they feel connected to the whole of the community. And so the goal here then is for consultants, where they provide and advise clients to solve problems. Coaches help you develop the abilities to solve the problems and the challenges themselves. So it's really a hands-on, step-by-step, just working through very particular needs that you identify. So as I mentioned before, and coaching generally tends to have more success because you are walking through and being resourced in your very identified need. Any questions here? Anybody been in a coached cohort before with Christian Formation, the Office of Christian Formation? Okay. We have cohorts. This is a plug for our fall cohorts. We offer other cohorts that are not as long, but they are also themed, and these are free to you. And so you can sign up for, I think it's 6 straight weeks, Janet, of cohorts. And so you can look for that. Maybe that's one thing that we can add to the links that we put in, Janet. Sorry, I forgot to mention I would say that. And Janet will put that in at a later time in the chat. So how do you as congregations benefit from participating in the round the table? Well, one, I want you to know this is all free, folks. And that is the beauty and gift of the Lilly Foundation for offering us this grant that we are in to support this work in the ministry of our coaches. So it's free to you. So think about it. When you talk about these 9 coach sessions that you'll be in, and all of the resources that we've pulled, it's about 500 hours free to you. And we have free coaching for your ministry support. You're also in these groups, and so you're learning from other peers who are trying different things, and you are learning from one another and also supporting one another. And one of the things that I say about our cohorts in the Around the Table initiative is that this is content rich. And for me, that just means you are supported with a ton of foundational resources. And I'll name a few here. The ones that really support what you're doing, as I named, are the Sabbath practices, which was written after a study of 5,500 folks in the PCUSA asking, what do you need? This was right after the pandemic. How can we support you as faith leaders? And there were 6 questions, I believe, and in the response, they recognized that there were some things that they needed to be able to share with folks in the household, because parents were saying, I don't know what it means to be my children's youth leader, and they're asking me all these questions, and I don't really know what to do. And so we have these Sabbath practices that came and that was born out of that time. And so we're using it as a resource for these cohorts for you all to use. We're also using these two, oh gosh. hope my bookshelf doesn't fall over. Okay, we're also using these 3 books. You don't have to read them, but they are resources to you. The first one is called Soul Stories, African American Christian Education. Now, this is yes, it says African American, but it is helpful for all of us. And there's an article that I attach with this where a person from a white congregation actually read this book and used it in her congregation, and she wrote an article about it. So we pair those two together. And what it does is it's a 4-part process called story linking, and it teaches you how to connect your stories, your personal story, to your faith story, to an inspirational story of a living person or someone who has passed on, a person from your heritage, and we take those 3 stories to look at perhaps an issue that has come up, and then we talk about what's the next most faithful step in light of these things. And so the next most faithful step, I'll introduce another way. And in here they talk about a care process, CARE, where you and the care process is in the beginning, it's a very short one, and everything is kind of built around this process. So the care stands for creating hospitable space, asking self-awakening questions, reflecting theologically together, and then enacting the next most faithful step. And I share this story of my own personal experience because I was using this book for my presbytery. This is when I was a presbytery leader. So the subtitle for this book is Living and Leading Change on Purpose. And I was reading that with my presbytery and was teaching the care process. Um, and just so happened on one day was picking up my daughter from school and was on a Zoom call, so I wasn't really paying attention to her. Was trying to get back to the house so I can finish the Zoom call on my computer, and I remembered I hold my ear because I remembered hearing her breath was different. And so I turned to look at her, and I could tell she was visibly upset. And so the care process popped into my mind because I needed to quickly create a space where we could have a conversation because I could tell she was hurting. And so I thought, oh, process, let me try it here. And I didn't say this aloud to her, but I was thinking it as it helped to ready myself to be available to her. And so I pulled the car over, said I got to go on the Zoom, and there were some things going on in her school, some bullying, and so we talked through everything that was going on, and it helped me to be objective. It helped me to remain um, open to all that she was sharing, so that we can talk about, well, what might be best for you now that in light of all of this. So we talk about that care process within these cohorts just as a quick go-to, as a way to, no matter where you are, you don't need resources to use the care process. It's easy to remember, and it's something that we as loving mentors and adults can use in this process with our young people and teach them to do also within their own peer groups. The other one is an amazing book that I just read last year by Justin Whitmell Early called Habits of the Household. I'm going to give a disclaimer here. I will say that it is um, definitely talking about households that are two-parent between a man and a woman. I'll say that outright. However, the information that is in here and the ways that Justin talks about his own household and the things that they do intentionally from morning until evening. So every chapter is an ebb and flow of the day and how God is brought into that space. I think it's just a great way to think about how other people are organizing their households so that it is a invitational place for God to be invited into and to be a part of the life and of the household itself. So those are the books that we use that are that all of the coaches know about, are using in some way as they are approaching the coaching moment with you. And you have access to these. We have an online portal that all of the cohort members can go to with just a ton of resources within them. And so you'll get those links once you sign on. And so a lot of these are free resources. Some you will have to buy, like these books, but we have a lot of PDFs and a lot of curriculum that is free there that you can have. And for those who sign on and who do not miss more than, I think it's 3 of your cohort coach sessions, you will receive $1,500 towards an intergenerational retreat. Because what we're hoping for is for congregations to begin being more intentional about bringing children and youth into the regular um, aspects in ministry that is happening, especially worship. And so we want you all who have finished these cohorts to be able to have retreat, or even if it's a day retreat, to talk about what you've learned and some things that you can share with them to take forward in ministry. So seriously, what's not to love about this? So I those are the big pieces of how cohorts are designed for the Around the Table initiative. So would love to entertain if you have any questions here, or any things that you might want to know about the test cohorts that have many have concluded already, and what we've learned from those. So just opening up the floor for questions.
I would definitely love to hear a little bit about the test cohorts, and how that's going to inform this next wave. We prayerfully considered that, and it was not the right time for our congregation to engage, and so we did not. And so, trying to assess for us if it's the right time or not. Thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, everything that you saw in the design of the Wave 1 cohorts is by virtue of us learning from the test cohorts. We learned that churches cannot always bring all of their leaders. That's number one. We learned that there are churches who want a shorter time frame to meet because that's what they can commit to because of the changing landscapes. We have a lot of folks who have been affected. For example, we have a lot of folks who've been affected by the last 100 days of our new administration, and they're trying to navigate the changes of within their congregations, and the people within those congregations, and along with being a part of a cohort. And so we recognized that they needed the flexibility to shift and move. So we wanted to give them an opportunity to determine the length of time that they would spend in a cohort, and they can do that with their coaches. Another thing that we learned is that we needed more affinity groups to represent congregations and to pair congregations with each other, so who are dealing with similar issues, to be a point of support. Many of our congregations are dealing with a lot of depression, and I just need to say that as it is. They see the decline in their numbers, but they think they're the only ones. And so seeing other congregations who are faced with some of the similar issues help them to know, hey, we're not alone, and they can hear from how this congregation has worked to make some changes or to address the needs, and they try things out together as a group. They're also talking about the issues that their young people are facing when we're talking about urban versus suburban communities. And so some of these topics that we are doing videos are around come out of what we learned were topics within those test cohorts and the faith communities within those test cohorts. So those are some of the major things that we learned in the test cohorts. We have coaches from around the country. We have cohorts in Puerto Rico. We had people representing Alaska and Mexico and well, no other countries, but we had the range that you see demographically in the Presbyterian Church was represented in our test cohorts, and in our coaches, I should say, in our coaches diversity. And so we have the ability to really support all of the communities that may come forward. And so we also learned about the content because we were moving each session through every Sabbath practice. So with each cohort, you would do a Sabbath practice. We learned that might not be helpful for everyone. So we're offering to say, here are your resources. The coaches know about it. They've learned about it, worked with them. And if they find that a congregation or faith community needs that support, that drilled down, then they can go into that. Otherwise, they'll mention it to say, hey, don't forget about your resource in our resource bank, and use that for this particular need that you might have here. Try it here. Try and then come back. And then they come back and then they can talk more about it. So those are the biggest pieces of learnings that we have from our test cohorts. We also learned that people don't want to meet all the time. And so originally this wave 1 cohort was supposed to meet 18 times. And so we said, slash that. We're only going to do 9 coached cohorts, and then the community, the cohort itself decides how they want to view those video webinars, if they're going to do it as a group, and they decide together. But just 9 we know are required to be present for. So those are the things that we learned from our test cohorts so far. Any other questions? Megan, I see you unmuted.
My unmute doesn't always work. Thank
no
you for
problem.
noticing the look on my face. Could you talk a little bit about the application process? And specifically, I'm the type of person who's like, what if we do all this work on the application and then don't get accepted?
Oh, no, that's not the
Okay, that's
case.
not an issue.
No,
Okay.
you'll be, so the application itself, if Janet, you can put some of those links in the chat now. The application is really almost like a dating app, where we want to learn about your congregation so that we can help to pair you with a like congregation. So the questions that are on the application tell us about your congregation. What are the demographics? Who are the how many children do you have in your ministry program? How many youth do you have in your ministry program? What does your pastoral staff look like? And so that we can do a better job of grouping cohorts together. So this is not about selection in terms of who's in and who's out, but it is more so, how do we pair you, and which might be the best coach to assist? Because what we ended up doing last year in the test cohorts, where you saw the general test cohorts, we found it best to put churches with similar sizing together. Because when you have a congregation who has 500 plus members with a church of only 100 members, they're facing very different needs and very different issues. And that just doesn't, it takes away from the time that they have to move forward with their particular ministries. So we started to group them within their demographic and size makeup. And so the application is simple in terms of just getting to know who you are as a congregation. We also offer you an opportunity to give a descriptor if there's something dynamically wonderful about your church or that identifies you as a church, for you to share that with us, just so that we know, what are you happy about in with your congregation. And so that's the reason for the application, to make it easier for us to group cohorts together.
Great, thank you.
I will say that the shift to the application right now is geared toward the wave 1 A cohorts, where we're looking for 2 to 3 ministry leaders per faith community. We made the decision recently to open it up for groupings of individuals, and so that isn't represented on that application, and it'll be a separate application that we'll put out in the next couple of weeks. So I want to let you know about that. And our deadline is listed as May the 30th, but we are very flexible because we know, it's just a difficult time. People are dealing with natural disasters coming out of Easter, travel, graduations, all the things. And so we understand that not all folks can apply or get their application in on time. And we had a couple of stragglers last year in our test cohort. So I don't want you to feel that the application deadline is a problem. You just let me know. Hey, Nima, I know I'm traveling the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to get it in, and it'll be fine. We'll bring it in. Any other questions?
So I just kind of fell into this whole idea yesterday when I saw something on Facebook, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm looking for.
Yay!
I need a new thing to dive into. So I have not done any prayerful discernment and have not discussed this with my pastor yet. I do have a parent in mind. I would love to get those two on board with me, but if I don't, is this something that I should pursue? on my own and teach them what I learn as I go, like you were saying in the second cohort group? And if so, should I wait for that application to come out?
Yes and yes. I would say have those conversations with and you can share the application because it details what Around the Table is, what we're trying to do. And it's a 2-page info sheet, kind of this presentation on a piece of paper, and you can share what you learned here. If they don't have the time, then just say, hey, Nima, and I'll give you my email in just a minute. Just send me an email and say, I'm really interested in that group. The individual cohort grouping so that I can join and share later with my church. Not a problem. And then I'll send you all the details when it's ready, just so you don't have to think about it again. But we'll have your name to share when the application's ready.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any others?
I just have a quick question. We are a congregation in transition. We
Okay.
now have a bridge interim after an interim, and so at some point we'll have a new pastor. My bridge interim is very much on board with this concept. I anticipate whoever ends up being called here will also be, but I know group dynamics work best when, the group stays the same
Correct.
throughout the time. And so, just trying to think through, and we are without a youth person currently. And so that's not someone that can also partner in this. And so does that feel like, from what you know of the test cohorts, does that sort of environment in transitional period work well, or is it better to pause?
I don't say not better to pause. I say this is a perfect time. However, the people that you bring on board is key for your particular situation. So I would invite someone like yourself who is already staff with a parent or adult mentor that is already supporting your children and youth ministry. You all are the constant here in such a transitional time. And so the two of you together can do this learning. And many of the all the webinars are already pre-recorded and will be available to you with all the resources following your cohort experience. So when your new pastor comes on board, you can share these pieces with them. Hopefully they'll be on board by the time you plan your intergenerational retreat. And that's when you and your other leader can share all the things that you've learned from your cohort with the church to say, this is what we've been doing to prepare us for how we move into this time of transition with our new pastor. I think it's a beautiful time to marry all of those things together. And because you're giving your pastor who's coming in an understanding of where you all are hoping to go and where you are guiding that ship and heading that ship in that direction. Because again, this I feel is very in line with any congregation's goals, regardless if your pastor is there or not. They would want you to help to deepen the relationships and connections that young people have to God, period. And that's what we're doing. We're doing it through storytelling. So I think that they would be on board with that and would be supportive of that. So yes, I'd say you can, Jennifer, through your situation, if you have an adult mentor, definitely sign up for the cohort cluster A.
And Jennifer, I'll just pop in and say, as a pastor, I would love to hear that the church I was being called to was already in a process like this and not just sitting around waiting for a new pastor to come and tell them what to do.
Right. And if you have the current bridge pastor and then therefore the session, right? And if whatever committees you have, and so it's it's the commitment and buy-in from those folks, which I think is also, important if somebody does choose to be or needs to be in the wave 1B, is that you can still have that communication and that buy-in from those other lay leaders. Because among other things, we know that there are plenty of churches out there, particularly small ones, that don't have a constant pastoral leadership, right? So there are other people who can be those people who know what's going on and support
Amen.
it.
Mhm.
Thank you all. I appreciate all your wisdom. So thank you.
You're welcome. And we do have another church in your neighboring community who's signed up. You know Destiny Williams
I
and
do.
McCarver. So she and her church and leaders have signed up. So
Okay.
we can talk about, grouping, but you have some folks
Cool.
in Atlanta.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone else want to offer a question? I think we might be there. We're close to the end of our session today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I invite you also, if you know of friends in your area or congregations geographically close to you that you may want to partner with, even you too, Carol, in your area. Even if you're coming in as an individual, if you have a congregational friend from a different congregation, you want to invite into this process to journey with you. That's the greatest point of support and success for the future, that you're journeying together with someone else. And so with that, I'm gonna give our scripture, our
Can I,
second.
can
Oh,
I
yes.
share some resources?
Yes, I'm sorry, Miata, please, our resource queen.
It's okay. It's okay. There are, so Janet put the landing page where you can get to all the things. And then I also put our resource list, which is in the Wakelet platform, which you can get to from the other one as well, which gets you, which we can change from behind the scenes and update all the things. But I just wanted you to know, for example, we have a new series of quick sheets that have just launched that are faith, that the first two are out, one the first summer, Faith Family on the Go, for church leaders with ideas of things to do to support families during the summer, and Faith Family on the Go, actually a PDF you can just print and give to your families. It's ready to go. And we're gonna have lots of those coming out over the next couple of years on all different kinds of topics. But that is several of them. And we also, with our partnership with Presbyterian Publishing, there are additional free downloadable guides to go with the flyaway books that have come out. So eventually all the children's flyaway books will have these free downloads that are great for families at home, but also can be used in, Sunday school or story time or with wondering questions and all those kinds of things. There's a podcast with several seasons. There are a couple of new books out with Presbyterian Publishing, including one that's on pre-order, Seeing and Being Jesus in the World: How to Live God's Radical Welcome as a Family. And What About the Children? 5 Values for Multiracial Families. And this fall, there'll be one that will be a Bible Moments devotional for families that's going to come out. These are all things that we have helped fund. Then we also have some card ring sets that are cards that have questions. Yeah, Janet's holding those up. And if you missed it, in Advent, we had an Advent candle lighting devotional that's not dated and you can use over and over again, or use this year if you didn't. And many of our things, we're trying to make sure are available in Spanish and in English. But you can get to all of those from that link. And I'm the one who, ties in all of the resources that we're creating. So if you've got questions about resources, reach out to me. Our other big resource that is coming out in the fall, when it comes out, depends on printers and tariffs and all kinds of things. But anyway, is a card deck that for families is going to be super exciting, with faith practices at home on all different kinds of topics and ordinary moments. So like, firsts, the first day of school, the first day of, of this, or maybe it's losses. So it could be loss of a pet, etc. Those kinds of things. That will be a card deck from the PCUSA store of 60 cards. And we are excited about being able to provide those in the fall. So I'm zooming through it because I know we're out of time. Question, Jennifer had one, it looked like.
Or clap, she was clapping, it looked
Oh,
like.
she was clapping. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, But really, there are lots of great resources out there. So do check them out, and most of them are free.
Thank
Almost
you.
all of them.
Thank you, Miata, and forgive me for leaving you out of the presentation. We need to hear this, that all of these wonderful resources are at your fingertips without having to pay a dime. So we're grateful for you, Miata. Thank you for your ministry. And so I bring us to our closing scripture. This is, so I started with the Deuteronomy passage, and this one here, Psalm 121, are the guiding scriptures for our Around the Table initiative. And when all of you read the resources that come from the Sabbath practices, they end with a blessing from this psalm. It says, I lift up my eyes to the hill. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore. So we pray God's peace and love and joy be yours this day and always. Amen. So thank you for being with us, everyone.